If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to IGH Going Rogue. Today is Monday, November 11th. What a beautiful day. What an excellent country and world to wake up in. Free from the crazies, the nuts, the insane asylum patients running wild. The Democrat Party, thank God, was beaten down, beaten to a pulp in a landslide victory we haven't seen since Reagan in '84. And in order to talk about this, since I am, of course, very biased, I'm bringing in one of the top guys in journalism. He's a household name to everybody, and if you don't know him, you've probably been in a time capsule for the last 30 years. Rick Sanchez, good friend. I'll give you a brief bio. He's Cuban immigrant, grew up in Miami. Despite a humble background, he earned a scholarship in journalism to the University of Minnesota. He was the first Hispanic and bilingual TV news anchor to host a primetime show. He was also the first to incorporate social media in TV, creating a 3-screen experience as noted by the New York Times. He's got a long career. He's been, RT, Univision, Fox, CNN, MSNBC. I mean, the guy's a stud. What can I tell you? He's interviewed 4 presidents. He's interviewed Noriega, Gorbachev, even Castro. He's won Peabody's. He's won a DuPont Award, Emmys. Jeez. Anyways, enough. Rick, welcome, man. Welcome. What can I say, dude? You're a stud. You're the real deal, and you know the rules, right? We're going rogue. Well, truth bombs, F-bombs, no bullshit. So let's fucking go, man.
My kids call me embarrassing, but yeah, all those things are very nice. I appreciate accolades. That's
absolutely,
nice.
Brother.
It's great to join you, Ivan. It's you and I have been friends for a long time. We've talked about a lot of things, and we've seen a lot of ups and downs in this country. And I think that there's something positive happening right now, and I think that's one of the things that we could talk about. Hopefully, for our country, for ourselves, it'll be capitalized on correctly. So that.
Well, so that's exactly what I wanted to hit the ground running is, holy shit, dude. Everybody has been talking, well, me and you have been talking about this Hispanic shift, all the way to D.C., right? From D.C., our days in D.C. And, and it really was never happening. It wasn't happening. And then you saw Trump improve on Romney's dismal numbers. And then you saw him improve again in 2020. Then we saw it move a little bit more in 2022. But fuck, 46%, dude, nobody's ever hit that. Bush hit 44 in 2004, and then it just went down, right? 31, 27, et cetera. What happened? I mean, I'm going to tell you, it was Trump, it was freedom, it was all this shit, but, what do you, the reality as a journalist?
I think it's important for us to look, first of all, at the numbers, because a lot of people will say a lot of things regarding what, it's a landslide, it's this and that. But rather than try and distinguish it with adjectives and adverbs, let's just tell people what actually happened.
Let's do it.
So let's look at Latina women. Hillary Clinton was plus 44% with Latina women.
That's crazy.
Biden went down to plus 39% with Latina women. Follow me here. Kamala Harris, plus 24%.
Wow.
So think about that. Latinas went plus 44 for Hillary Clinton, but they only went plus 24 for Kamala Harris. That means she dropped 20 points. That's extremely significant when you look at politics. But if you think that story is interesting, which it is, by the way, and certainly noteworthy, let's look at Latinos. Let's look at male Hispanics in the United States. Hillary Clinton was plus 31. That means 31 more percent of Hispanic males voted for her than voted for Mr. Trump. Biden was plus 23, so it went down. We're starting to see the shift. That's when you and I, Rick Sanchez and Ivan, were getting together and saying, hey, there's a shift downward. Where's this heading? We thought at the time it would probably either stay the same or drop a little bit. Boy, did it drop. Let me throw this last number at you, and if you're listening to the sounds of our voice, this is the actual number that most people are finding most shocking in this election. So let me take you again. Again, Hillary Clinton got plus 31. Joe Biden got plus 23 of Hispanic males. Guess what happened in this last election? Donald Trump plus 10.
That's
not
amazing.
only did he not just cut the margin, he obliterated the margin, and then increased by 10. So 10% of Hispanic males, machos, voted more for Mr. Trump than they did for Ms. Harris. That is a phenomenal shift.
That's a holy shit moment, dude.
Itself.
So what happened? Why? I mean, I'm going to tell you, it was Trump. It was, the messaging. It was this, that. But let's hear it from you from a pro.
Well, first of all, I don't think that we as Latinos in the United States are that different from any other Americans. And we saw a shift across the board in every single demographic in the United States. And Hispanics followed along. Part of the reason
do you think
for
we
that,
followed, or do you think
we more than followed along.
Did we follow, or did we lead, or did we lead that shift?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think we led the shift, but I think we can't separate ourselves from the commonality of this particular election. Every specific demographic shifted to the right, and they shifted to the right for at least twofold, maybe threefold reasons. That there are many reasons, but I think there were three that were particularly salient in this point, looking at it journalistically. One is that people in America vote for change. They want a change candidate, somebody who could look at me in the eye and say, ¿Sabes qué? You know what? We are going to make things better for you and for your children. That's the story of America. Yeah. I want things to be better for my child, and my child is going to make things better for my grandchild. When Ms. Harris went on The View, and she was asked specifically, how are you going to separate yourself? She was asked by my old friend who I work with, Sonny Houston, who, as you mentioned, I've worked in all the different networks. I worked with her at CNN. And she asked her, how are you going to distance yourself or separate yourself from Mr. Biden? She said essentially the following: I'm not. I'm not. She basically told the voting populace that whatever they didn't like from Joe Biden, who has a 40% favorability, which at times was barely in the high 30s. She's saying, I'm going to be like the guy who has a 38% approval rating. Now,
and that was a number.
I'm not the smartest guy in the world, Ivan. Not as smart as you. But I'll tell you right now, the last thing you want to do is say, I want to be like a losing team. That means you're a loser. Sorry.
And by the way, she was asked that numerous times, not just on The View, but on other shows. And they said, what would you change? What would you do different? And she said, nothing. I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. That's crazy.
I mean, if you can't separate yourself, and I don't know, maybe we'll give her credit and say maybe it was loyalty. Maybe it was the fact that she, didn't want to publicly bash the guy who had given her a job. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm not here to talk about the human frailty or the human condition or the thing it is that makes people do what they do. The fact is, when she did that, she had really kind of cast cast the outcome for herself in that sense. And then number two, as far as I'm concerned, do you want to break that one down a little bit? Maybe we can disagree. Maybe we can find some.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Look, I think she didn't. I don't think it was a loyalty issue. I think it was a ideology issue. She believed in what they were doing, and she thinks they should have gone further. And that was her whole purpose, is to continue what they were doing and push it further and further and further. I think, and we can go into
I have a hard time disagreeing with you on that. I can't. I would love to challenge you on that.
When you talk to people on the street, regular folks, friends of ours, whatever, and we're sitting down, people are sitting there going, dude, many friends, Hispanic friends that didn't vote for Trump in 16 or in 20 said, I'm voting for this guy. This thing is a fucking joke. This woman is a disaster. They're more worried about fucking bathrooms and the economy and my wallet. The fucking gas prices going through the roof. You go to the supermarket, I used to be able to fill a cart with $400. Now it costs me $700 to $800. He goes, dude, they're fucking crazy. You know, so I'm going to vote for him.
No, but I agree with you. But that's not the point. The point that you and I were just about to were politely arguing about was: did she protect him because she felt it was the right thing to do, or did she protect him because she really agrees with all of the things that he pushed, which most Americans don't agree with? I guess. Look, I would argue we're both right. It's probably somewhere in the middle, and in the end, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Because
it's done.
If you tell me, if I ask you, why should I follow you, Ivan, and Ivan tells me, follow me because I am best friends with your worst enemy, I'm not going to follow you.
Right.
So
that's exactly
and you
right.
may be doing it because he happens to be a friend of yours and you want to be loyal to him. That's fine, but I'm still not going to follow you.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
I mean, I think sometimes voters respond, in terms of common sense. But let me address the thing that you just said, which I think is really fascinating, that a lot of people found her weird and unable to engage. I think we can look at that, again, breaking this down analytically, perhaps journalistically, is the American people never got a chance to know this woman. She was frickin' anointed. She was placed on a pedestal, and we were told, there she is. Look how beautiful. Remember the song Miss America? There she is, Miss America. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way in politics. Say what you want about Barack Obama. That son of a gun worked his ass off. He was there for 2 years. He ran for president. He went through the primaries. He wrote a book. He did all kinds of stuff. Yeah, he was a skinny black guy from Hawaii with a weird middle name. But people eventually followed him because they engaged with him, and he earned their engagement by working hard. She didn't do that.
Well, and he also
was essentially put there, and we had to just decide, oh, she must be good because they tell me that. That's not the way it works.
Right, and the other thing is, he let the American people know him. You could see his personality. He was cool. Yeah. It's like, dude, I'd like to go out and have a beer with this guy. He seems like a cool guy. This woman, they protected. She was so scripted and canned.
Correct.
They thought that they could hide her in a basement like Biden in 2020, and she was going to win because she had a D, and everybody hated Trump. But the problem is nobody ever knew her. It probably would have been worse if they knew her. I don't know. It probably would have been worse if they knew her. Who knows? But she got smashed.
But let's talk about the peculiarities of her, of who she is, right? I mean, and let's just be fair and let's be honest about this. You say this is a no bullshit show. Yep. Let's do no bullshit.
Absolutely.
The average American, the average Latino, does not necessarily cotton to someone whose culture they don't understand.
Right.
That doesn't mean they couldn't understand it. That doesn't mean they're prejudiced or bigoted.
Yep.
But when someone comes to my house and they eat different than I do, look different than I do, comb their hair different than I do, speak a different language than I do, whatever it is, eventually I will probably come to like them if they're the kind of human being that's worthy of my respect.
Yep.
But the moment they walk in the door, I'm not going to understand or maybe even like them. You have a woman who's an Indian, Jamaican, African American, or whatever it's called. She's a black, Jamaican, Indian woman. Great. And I think most Americans would eventually could come to respect and like somebody who comes from that kind of culture. But it's still, let's call it what it is, a little off-putting at first, a little different. So the average Latino, who's no different than the average American, looks at this and says, "Pero quién es esta mujer?"
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. My gardener recently here on the property, I was having a conversation with him the other day after the election, and I said, "Anthony, what did you think of the election?" He goes, "Well, Mr. Sanchez, I got to tell you, I know Trump, faults, warts, everything, but I've seen this guy for the last 6-7 years. I know who he is. Who is this woman?" Yeah. She was there for what, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
You see, we don't realize that the average voter is not like us. You and I have been studying the minutia, the trends, the charts. The average person, 2-3 weeks before the election, looked up and said, "Kamala what?" And they just couldn't get themselves to vote for somebody they don't know, hasn't engaged with them, and to them is a little weird.
Yeah, and the other thing is the average American doesn't consume news or politics much at all.
Correct.
Much at all. I was reading something the other day that said the average American consumes 2.5 hours of news a week. That's insane. We consume probably 12 hours a day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I just can't imagine 2.5 hours a week. I'd be lost. I wouldn't have a clue on what the hell's going on. So that describes so many people in this country. They're just lost. They don't know anything, and it's a lack of intellectual curiosity too. I mean, I always kid around because I told you this story a million times. I grew up in Potomac, Maryland. I mean, you lived there as well. And growing up in Maryland and Potomac in the 70s, people would be like, oh, you're speaking Mexican, or you're Mexican because I was speaking Spanish. I'm speaking Mexican, And I would say, no, actually, I was born in Peru. I came here when I was 3 years old. They're like, Peru, where the hell is that? Is that not like in Africa or something? Dude, it was just bizarre. And I always kid around. If you go down the street in most any city in the United States and just randomly pick somebody, they might not know where Peru is or Chile, or they might think it's right next to Congo or something, right? It's crazy. So,
I had a friend the other day say to me something that I thought was fascinating. He said, and funny as hell, he said, so what kind of Mexican are you? I said, oh, what do you mean what kind? He says, yeah, like what kind of Mexican? I said, oh, I'm a Cuban. He goes, oh, you're a Cuban Mexican. Okay. Because I got friends who are Honduran Mexicans and I got friends who are Peruvian Mexicans. They just, everybody in the United States is Mexican. And it's funny because it is a cultural understanding and we are who we are, and it's something kind of to build on. But we're, 62 million strong in the United States right now. And if this election, I think, has proven anything, it's that in many ways, the Latino culture, the Latino population is really no different than the American population in many ways.
And I think right now it's going to be the strongest demographic because it really became the swing voter. It really became the swing voter. And we've been talking about this for a long time. Is there's going to be a moment when Hispanics decide elections, and I think that moment happened last Tuesday.
You know what I think is interesting, Ivan. Here's what I think is most fascinating that I've been seeing as I put my, proverbial thumb in the air. Latinos, because you mentioned a while ago how much news they consume and how many people watch this and how many people watch that. And, many Latinos who don't speak Spanish, they've watched, my friend Jorge Ramos for many years. I like Jorge. He's a nice guy, but he's very left-leaning, always has been. And he's tried to drive people in that direction. A lot of victimization. I think the average... So first let me say this. As a guy who's worked at NBC, CNN, Fox News, RT, Univision, I can tell you the media today is not what it used to be and is not as responsible as it used to be and is very much owned by certain interests, including corporate interests. And that is in many ways they're failing. And just like you heard me say a moment ago, the average American couldn't engage or relate or wasn't given an opportunity to engage with Kamala Harris. The average American today also does not engage with the average mainstream news media. They just don't. They've lost them. And part of it is because they live culturally in a place that the average American does not live in. And I think that's important. I also think the average Hispanic in the United States, not just people like you and me who, are paid to know this stuff, but just instinctually, the average Latino in the United States doesn't cotton to some of these extreme changes that have been taking place. Take for example, the conversation around trans, the conversation around gay rights, some of the things that they just culturally don't get. That doesn't mean, again, I'm not trying to say that we as a people are bigoted or dislikeful or anything like that. I'm just saying culturally we don't get that. So along comes a candidate, a media, a party, an institution that is forcing these things. Let me take that back. That is introducing these concepts to us.
I don't know, but I don't know if that's the right word. I think the word forcing is more accurate, Rick, because you've seen what they've been doing with the schools and, a lot of that identity politics. Look, I think, Hispanics really don't care. I mean, you don't want to force it, the whole bathroom thing and shoving, certain agendas. I think Hispanics really push back. But I don't think Hispanics are bigoted or anti-trans or anti-gay at all. I really do not believe that. Look, growing up, I'll say it kind of as a joke, but it was true. Growing up, we used to say, when people would bash gays, we would sit there and go, dude, what's the problem?
People get bashed us.
On the contrary,
you've been bashed. I mean,
I said, but I said,
growing up, you bash the fat guy, the little guy, the tall guy.
Yeah. But we would always come back and say, right, what's the problem? If there's more gays, that means there's more chicks for us. Who cares? Bring it, man. Bring it. Who cares, right? And that was the attitude. Nobody gave a shit. But but it changed. Something changed where it became an agenda. And, mutilation of children, the sex changes and the books in schools. And it just became weird, man. It became very weird. I don't
know. And I respect you for articulating. I respect you for articulating it in the way that you do. And you do it aggressively. And it's certainly, I think it fits your personality. I think to a certain extent, I don't believe that the average Latino has really gotten all that information about the sex change and the this and the that. I think it's more still for them just a feeling that says, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't like it and it doesn't fit me. So I'm going to look at the other side because they had never looked at the side before. Yeah. Most of us who are Latino, like me, like my dad, like my mom, we come to this country, we're Democrats. You're Democrat because the Democratic Party is the one that's going to take care of you. For the first time in the last 8 to 10 years, we've seen this shift. And I think a lot of it is social psychological. I think a lot of it does actually have to do with the discomfort that people in the Latino community and all Americans are feeling. Yeah. They can't put their finger on it. They can't tell you, well, it's because of that one case where they sex trans operation for blah, blah, blah. No, I think it's just a sense that things are going too far in one direction and they're kind of instinctively pulling it back.
What's uncomfortable?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. People like to feel comfortable. They like to stay with what they know. A lot of people don't like change. And in general, right? In general, in life as a whole, people don't like a lot of change, right? So this was a lot of change and very fast and very aggressive, right? So, people were like, whoa, dude, what are you doing? The economy's in the toilet. Inflation, the interest rates, housing. I mean, what the hell? And you're freaking worried about this crap. Save it for another day. Worry about the fucking economy.
No, there's no question that
and you look at the last jobs report.
Person was also affected by the economic situation.
Yeah, I mean
everything costs too much.
That right. At the end, I think everything else and all this analysis and all this other crap that that's why I didn't do a show at all last week because I said, let everybody regurgitate and do whatever the hell they want and all. They're going to break down this and demographics and, the one-legged guy and, the three-eyed, woman and all this crap. But at the end, I think it was as simple, Rick, as it's the economy stupid. That I think is what it was. I think everything else, did it play a role? I think so. But I think at the end, the number one factor was the economy. We knew that, through the exit polls and we knew that through polls and, it was jobs, man. It was money in your pocket.
It's funny when I was doing the news on CNN, and I used to host a show, and I became the highest rated show on the network. But more importantly, I remember I got called into John Klein's office one day in the Time Warner Center in New York, and he said, I just want you to know something because we just got the numbers. You have now surpassed the highest numbers in the history of CNN, not only in terms of your demographic, 25 to 54, which is how they measure audiences, how many people between the ages of 25 and 54 watch you. But here's the thing that's just shocked everybody. You have the highest non-white numbers. I never heard of that classification before. Non-white numbers in the history of CNN.
Wow.
And he said, so we want you to sit down with our marketing and PR people to just kind of talk about what the hell's going on with this. Now, at the time, I was doing a lot of social media and that kind of thing. But it goes back to what you just said. I think as a Latino, as a guy who grew up poor, who grew up in the streets, guys like you and I and a lot of people, others, Donald Trump, among others, who probably could, we are, ¿cómo se llama? Niños en pañales, or babies compared to him. He was able to make people understand the things that were wrong, that needed to be either discussed or fixed. When I was at CNN and I had Rick's List, that's what I did with every show. I pointed to the things that weren't working, people understood it, and then we created this online community of, back then, 200,000 people on Twitter, which was a big story back then, because it was the first time Twitter had just been invented. So it was pretty cool to be able to do that. I kind of see a little bit of a manifestation of that with Donald Trump's effectiveness as a candidate. All he did was he held a mirror to the American people and said, look at what's going on. This is you. I can fix this. And you know what? I think that works. I think in the end, the thing that Mr. Biden, who, poor guy, couldn't do anything because he was just hapless at the end. Literally hapless. I mean, some people would be mean and say he was practically a corpse. I don't think that's too far off. And neither Mr. Biden nor Ms. Harris were able to conceptualize what the problem was and try and explain how they could either excuse it or make it better. In fact, they didn't even address it. These things that you're saying about the economy, they didn't address it.
No.
And they should. They actually had material. I could have written them something that would have at least been palatable. But do you know
what it reminds me, Rick? It reminds me of that summer of Bideners with Romney. They drew this caricature of him for the entire summer, and he did not respond. He did not respond to it. He didn't address it. He just thought it was going to go away, and they fucking smashed him, dude. And that's what happened with Harris. And, going back to Biden, everybody knew this guy was lost in 2020. I mean, he was hiding in his basement. He didn't know where he was or who he was half the time. Dude, by the time this election came around, dude, that debate, he was a disaster. What I don't get, and this is my question to you, because you've been in all the major networks in this country, you're a fucking boss, right? What happened? Why was the media so fucking complicit? Everybody knew, but they kept on saying he's sharp as a tack. He's sharp as a tack. He's amazing. He's, he walks on water. He's better than Obama, Why? I mean, I get the why, but how? Doesn't that just destroy the media? Aren't they dead now after this?
I don't know if they're dead. I don't know if there's still some kind of possibility that they can make some kind of comeback. I think institutionally, people just don't trust them anymore. They've given the American public no reason to be trusted.
Dude, but guys, colleagues of yours, Tapper, Wolf, all these guys, they said it with a straight face. How do they come back?
I think let me say this. I think there's a fundamental issue with democracy in our country right now. And that fundamental issue with democracy is being led by the institutions we once trusted. And namely, it's the media and the Democratic Party. I want you to think about this for a minute. I mean, if you're a true and blue Democrat, let's suppose you're a Democrat and you love the Democratic Party and you wanted to make sure that your party chose the best candidate to represent your ideology, right? Did the Democratic Party do that with Joe Biden? Did the Democratic Party do that with Kamala Harris? The answer is absolutely not. Joe Biden was anointed at the expense of others who were kicking his ass. Yeah. And the Democratic Party told those other people, Pete Buttigieg and what's her name, kept for Minnesota, and Bernie Sanders, they said, step down and salute the guy we will tell you to salute. And they did, because they wanted to, I guess, be team players. But that's not democratic. And Kamala Harris, I said a million times back in the spring, and I reported this while I was doing my show on RT. I said many, many times, the Democratic Party needs to, recognize the frailties of Mr. Biden and say, this guy cannot run for another term. They didn't. And beyond that, they have to immediately call for a primary where they let all Democrats fight it out. And that would have probably worked better for them, I would argue, but they didn't do either of those things. Instead, they relied on the same undemocratic principle, and that's what bit them in the ass. The news media, by the way, went along with it. And unlike me and you and a couple of other people out there who were telling them, what are you doing? They didn't follow that direction, and that's, they got their comeuppance. They got essentially what they deserved, I think, in this situation.
They got absolutely.
But there is an institutional lack of democracy. It's countrywide, geopolitical, domestic, and in many other ways that I could explain. For example, I'll give you one example right now: Ukraine. I mean, Mr. Biden and J.D. Vance are 100% correct on this issue. Let me give you a number. America, us, this country, spent after World War II in today's currency with inflation added
adjusted
$140 billion to rebuild Europe in the Marshall Plan. That's 17 countries completely rebuilt that we as Americans used our taxpayer money to rebuild Europe. $140 billion. Lock that number in, because here comes another one. Ready?
Yep.
Do you know how much money we have now spent in Ukraine, not to rebuild, but essentially to destroy that country, which is being more and more destroyed every day, by the way, which I think is a hapless policy. $220 billion.
Yep.
We spent $220 billion to destroy Ukraine. We spent $140 billion to fix all of Europe. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out that this is not a smart policy, and yet Joe Biden has consistently pushed that and other policies like it in the geopolitical world, which does two things. It makes us broke. It makes you go into my pocketbook and give my money away to people who have a better healthcare plan than I do. And what it also does, and this is really important, it makes the world hate us. We are despised by the Polar South, by the Global South community, by the BRICS nations, who are now forming a monetary system to come up to
and that's dangerous.
To challenge ours. And the reason they're doing it is because we're over sanctioning, over punishing, and allowing these conflicts to continue without an end. And Trump is right. Trump is right when he talks about these things.
100%. 100%. I agree with you. So, what happens now? A lot of people say, you see a lot of the Democrats, a lot of the pundits, a lot of your former friends in the media talking about there was a messaging issue. It wasn't an ideology. It wasn't the wrong policies. It was, and finger pointing, right? Are they going to double down? I mean, they're talking about, the resistance starts today, or are they going to take a look inside and figure out they need to maybe come back towards the center? That they went too far.
Well, you got to ask yourself, who are the people who are talking about this resistance? They're the people who have been,
talking about AGs and governors and,
bitch slapped to the point where they're hurting. I mean, the average American just wants the country to do well, and me, you, and everybody else out there. I think 90% of Americans just say, look, Mr. Trump, we voted for you. Make this thing right. That's all we care about. And I think the average Democrat, which is, or no, not the average Democrat, the average person who chose not to vote for Mr. Trump, that doesn't mean they hate Trump. It just means that they chose to go with another direction, just like people have, voted for other candidates at some time. And I think the average American is going to wait and see if Mr. Trump can make good on some of his promises. And if he does, they're going to continue to support him. And I think J.D. Vance will be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, man. What a surprise that guy,
because he makes mistakes, then, he'll be called to answer just like anybody else should be. That's why we call this America. It's a democracy, right?
Yep. But what a surprise he turned out to be, man. I mean, what a stud. Wow, I was really impressed. When I heard his name, I was like, man, I don't know about this one,
Me too.
And then, I mean, we talked about this, and wow, he went out on the circuits and did not back down. I mean, he can articulate. He is effective. Wow, what a stud that guy, man. I see him.
Well, like you, I have some friends in the party. Tucker and I have become pretty good friends over the years, and he and I have spoken a lot. And he had clued me into a few people who he trusted and thought were noteworthy in the party. And
I know he liked J.D. Vance, right? I mean, I think we talked.
I do like J.D. Vance. I think he's a real smart guy, and I think from what I've seen of him as a candidate, speaking journalistically, I think he's smart, he's viable, he's educated, he's balanced. I don't think he is, too far to the right or too far to the left. I think he's kind of just right in terms of most of the thinking. And I think the media, my former colleagues over at CNN in particular, have tried to typecast him by looking for things that he has said in the past, like the cat lady comment. And I thought a lot of that was unfair, only because I know that that's the kind of stuff they've done with me as well. And I'm sure with you, because that's kind of what the media does. They go into your history, find one little thing and say, aha, that's what he's all about. Well, we're not all about one thing we may have said 10 or 20 years ago.
Exactly, 100%. So I'm glad you brought up the numbers, and you brought up, some people voted for this and for that. So in 2020, I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole or not, but I'm going to take you down there with me anyways. So here we go. Trump got 74.2 million votes. And everyone had said, astronomical number. It was huge. And, we all thought that he was going to just landslide Biden. I mean, the size of the crowds, the excitement, the everything, flotillas, boats, caravans. I mean, you remember I told you, I led that caravan around the Beltway in D.C. We did an entire loop, cars one behind the other, all around the Beltway in Washington, right? And, we saw Biden hiding in a basement, and he got 81 million votes. We look at the results on Tuesday, and Trump got 74.6. So he increased his vote count by 400,000. What happened to the 11 million votes that Biden got that Kamala didn't? Were they, a lot of people, go back to that.
I know. I've heard the conspiracies that now this proves that it was all bullshit. A bullshit election and everything. I don't buy that, and I don't deal in facts based on innuendos.
Right.
What if this and what if that?
So
it was a mail-in,
right?
On data. Huh?
It was the amount of mail-in ballots that went out, right? Because they didn't go out this time around.
Agreed.
Right?
Yes, I think COVID shifted that election. I think it made it much easier for people to vote, which is I'm not sure that's a bad thing, and I think that may have played into why there were so many more people who voted back then than voted this time around. Because remember, Trump got a lot more votes than anybody else either.
Yep.
So they both got more votes than any presidential candidate at any time.
He went from 66 million to 74, right? And and Democrats went from 69 to 81, which was insane.
I'm looking right here. Here's the change in the presidential raw vote from 2020 to 2024. Red states, Trump went in 2020, got 33 million. This time he got almost 35 million, up about 1.5, 2, depending on how you look at this. In blue states, Trump did 15 million, and this time, again, he did 15 million. So he did very well in blue states as well. Harris, here's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. She went from, Biden had 25,000 in 2020. She only got 22,000. Actually, he had almost 26,000. So she lost about 4 million votes to Biden.
Yeah.
And in the blue states, Biden had 19 million. She did 22 million. So actually, she went up.
Yeah, but I saw some numbers that the vote count in a lot of these blue states went down. Like California, it was minus 11%, and some it was minus 13, and some it was, so you saw this.
The reason for that, right? There's a shift. There's a demographic shift going on in America, and especially since COVID, where people who traditionally lived in blue states people who lived in red states are going to blue states, and people who lived in blue states are going to red states. A lot of people are choosing to leave New York and come to Florida, for example. Perfect example, where I am right now in my house. Yep. There is an onslaught of people who are coming from the Northeast to South Florida, to Alabama, to Georgia, to Tennessee, etc. A lot of people are leaving California and going to New Mexico and Arizona, and that is just kind of changing the entire equation in the United States. So demographers are having a tough time trying to keep up with all of this.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's been crazy. So tell us about Rick the person. You've been married forever, kind of like me, right? I've been married, it'll be 30 years in March. I know you've been married for a long time. You have a beautiful family and a beautiful house, by the way. Just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I was born an immigrant kid from Cuba, grew up poor. My dad worked in hotels where he washed dishes. and bus tables. And my mom worked in a factory where she sewed shoes. And they taught me that the most important thing in our lives, like most of us who are Latinos and come to this country, or even immigrants who come to this country, is an education. They taught me to respect this country, and I've worked hard. I became, a pretty good student. I got a scholarship to go to Minnesota. I played football, believe it or not.
Wow.
American football, as my dad used to say. And then I was lucky enough that, it's funny, when I was there, some professors said to me, they said, CBS News is offering a scholarship to study journalism. And I told my parents and my bigger brother, and he said, journalism, what are you going to do with that? I don't know anybody who's a journalist. I mean, forget journalism. Go become an engineer. Go become a doctor. I said, no, this is really interesting. So I applied. And you know what? Lo and behold, I won the thing. And they gave me a scholarship to study journalism at the University of Minnesota, graduated, came to Miami. Now, remember, I'm old enough to remember, and you probably are too, there was a time in America where there was nobody who looked like us on TV. Yeah. There was, America.
Dude, and you were a badass at WSVN. Everybody watched your show, right? It was, I think you created that type of news, because before it was fucking lame, right? It was just so fucking boring. And then all of a sudden it's like, fuck Rick Sanchez, man. Yeah. Right? Especially during the hurricanes and all that crap you were out there. I sent you that promo that I saw on YouTube about you last night. It was just hilarious. In the middle of the storm, the wind, the rain, all kinds of shit. I was like, dude, that guy's the man, And I remember everybody in South Florida watched your show because it was a must. But go ahead. No. Some of that is heartwarming for me to hear, because it is a part of my history and it makes me feel good. We did start a style of telling and sharing news that no one had ever thought to do before, and it worked. And we became, what you're talking about is WSVN. It's a station in Miami. Most people don't know anything about it, but before, people were doing news with lots of graphics where reporters would roll up their sleeves, go out, talk to people. Everything wasn't teleprompter. You actually would go on the scene and explain the story. That's what I did. I started that, and it became the most copied format in the United States. Fox News literally copied the format of Channel 7, and that's why they did that big open, hello again, everybody, here's what's coming up next, with the and the splashy and all that stuff. And it made me feel good that we were able to create something like that. I remember talking to Roger Ailes, Mr. Murdoch and Mr. Ailes, who created Fox News at the time, had come and spoken to me, and they didn't have enough money back then to take me away from Channel 7. But at the very beginning, they were talking about creating a format that would do that. They ended up taking Shepard Smith instead, who was my understudy at the time. That's right.
At Channel 7. But man, it's all about being true to yourself, being transparent, being a good storyteller, believing in the journalistic ethics that are important, that aren't being appreciated today. I'll tell you something that really bothers me, dude. This really bothers me. If you turn on most of the media today, if you turn on, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, even Fox, you know what you see? You see people who used to be a spokesperson for some president, be him a Republican or a Democrat. You see people who used to be some lawyer. You see, there's a reason that you go to journalism school. There's a reason you practice your craft. I wouldn't think to go into a hospital and put on a white coat and pretend to be a doctor. But today, when you turn on these TV channels and these television networks, you see all these people who are pretenders. They're not journalists. They've never practiced journalists. They wouldn't know a story if it bit them in the ass. They've never covered a story, and yet they all have television shows. This woman, Jen Psaki, is the latest example. Yeah. She was a spokesperson for the president, and then she becomes a person with her own show on television. Now ask yourself, what is more state TV than that?
Right. George Stephanopoulos.
Between ourselves and the politicians and the government. We're not supposed to be a part of it.
Right.
So...
And look, I don't know if you remember Mark Moynihan, but he was with you at WSVN. And, when we launched Americano, we brought him to, from the DC bureau at Fox News. And, my conversations with Mark over the years were always, we always brought up your name a lot. and we always talked about, the style, right? Is the news, right? And it's going to hit whoever it hits. If you're in the news, fuck it, you're going to take a hit, man. Regardless of party. And then there's opinion, right? But we've lost that shit. We've lost that. And that's what we were trying to do.
The ability to have a take, the ability to do it professionally. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion, because today anybody can get the news from anybody. So they want to see it through you, and they want to believe that you're giving it to them fairly.
Right.
So no, you can't just give two sides to every story, because when I go and I speak at universities, a lot of times students ask me about that. Don't you have
everybody pay attention to this? Everybody pay attention to this, because we talked about this about. Sometimes there isn't two sides, but there's only one side, right? So go, man. I think that's very important for everybody to listen to. Greatest
example of this is, imagine right now that I asked you, is it raining outside, right? And that's the question. So I'm covering the story about the weather, and I want to know if it's raining outside. All I have to do is go to my window and see if it's raining outside.
Yep.
But the journalistic community in the United States has for some reason said that instead of going to the window and finding out whether it's raining, I have to have two people on. One who says it's raining and one who says it's not raining.
Yep.
Bullshit.
That's right.
Bullshit.
That's right.
You don't need to have two people on, one to tell you it's raining and one to tell you it's not raining. You just need to get your lazy ass up, go to the window and find out if it's raining or not.
There you go.
Some things are wrong. And they're wrong because we know they're wrong, and it's okay to say so and explain so and have a take. So
100%.
Takes in journalism are primordial at this point, and too few people understand that. There you go.
That's amazing, man. Well, hey, Rick, I know you got to run, man. Thank you so much. It's been fucking awesome. We got to do this again, but next time, let's do it in person, and we share a cocktail and have a cigar, man, because I know you like your cigars. So, and I owe you a drink, anyways. You gave me a drink at your house, so I'm bringing it back. I got the Zaccapas here, and I got a Basil Hayden. I know you like bourbon, so next time, man, let's do it in person.
My son turned me on to those old fashions, and I haven't looked back. At the end of the day, in fact, at the end of the evening, sometimes my wife and I will sit around and have some adult time together, and I'll say, you know what? I'm going to have an old-fashioned. So it's kind of become my favorite thing to do. It's beating red wine, which tends to give me acidez.
Yeah.
Heartburn. So,
well, brother, I appreciate
Ivan.
you, man.
Take care, my friend.
Absolutely. Take care, Rick.
God bless.
All right. See ya. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. The great Rick Sanchez, the man, the myth, the legend, man. The guy's a stud, and trust me, you're going to be seeing a lot more of him very soon. Very soon. Good things are happening in the background. For Rick and for a lot of people. As far as you guys, do not miss our show the rest of the week. We have some huge names coming. We're going to be beating the crap out of the other side. We're going to be exposing a lot of things that happened. And who knows, maybe we'll even go down that rabbit hole with about 2020 and the number of votes. And, I know a lot of people that disagree with Rick that it just wasn't mail-in ballots and that there is a legitimate problem. And we're going to go through that as well. I think there's enough data there to show us that, something happened. So let's find out. And you probably saw some stuff on the desk. Zacapa bottles, Basil Hayden. We're going to be giving those away. We're going to be announcing to everybody how you can participate in these rewards, so to speak. So, you get to choose. Do you want a Zacapa rum or do you want a Basil Hayden bourbon? And we'll ship it to you, or we'll get it at a local store where you live anywhere in America. But we're going to let you know how the details go. And stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. All right, guys. Hey, I want to make sure that everybody knows that, we have a tremendous opportunity now to save money. Black Friday's coming, Christmas shopping, everything. Don't forget to go to mypillow.com, use promo code IGH. Use promo code IGH and get a significant discount, save money, and help our friend Mike Lindell. We'll see you tomorrow.